Squire Partner.
Here.
Squire Carl. Here. Judge Executive Day.
Yes, ma'am. All right, the Budget and Finance Committee is duly constituted to conduct business this afternoon. We have several items on the agenda and we have some guests with us, so we're going to allow them to proceed first. But I do want to just reiterate the timeline. Thank you. I want to reiterate the timeline. We are at our last meeting in April. Derby week. Happy Derby week to all. This is our Budget and Finance Committee before the presentation of the budget on Friday, May the 1st. We will set the compensation for the coroner, the magistrates, and the county attorney, as well as the elected officials, deputies, and assistants, deputy coroner, assistant county attorney staff. The budget will be presented to the fiscal court May 1st, and Tuesday, May 12th, we will convene in the committee of the whole. All right. So I'd like to invite representatives from Castle and Key, their attorney, Mr. Tim Eifler, and also Eric Gregory from the Kentucky Distillers Association is here with us as well. And we have a proposal regarding industrial revenue bonds for Castle and Key. Welcome. The floor is your all's.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
I've got some handouts. I don't know, were you all provided copies ahead of time of anything?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, my name's Tim Eifler. I'm a lawyer with Stoll Keenan, and I'm outside counsel for Castle and Key Distillery. With me today is Cassidy Price, who's general counsel for the distillery. Can you hear me? With me today, Cassidy Price, who's general counsel for the distillery, and Will Arvin, who's president, and of course Eric Gregory, who's executive director of the Kentucky Distillers Association. I'm going to start. Let me hand these out. Basically, we're requesting that the fiscal court consider the issuance of an industrial revenue bond to finance the distillery and a proposed expansion. And so what I'm handing out now is this a term sheet that really just summarizes the main points, main elements of what we're proposing. And I've got some numbers to show you. And okay. Judge, you have a copy of that?
Yes, sir, I do.
You want a copy? So what we're asking the fiscal court to consider today, hopefully for a first reading, is an ordinance that would authorize the issuance of a series of bonds for the benefit of the project company. These are revenue bonds, so just like we've done before on some other projects with the fiscal court, sort of the court would act as a conduit. And the primary purpose of the bonds would be to provide a temporary property tax abatement. The principal amount, let me say this. First of all, the property that we're talking about is the property of the distillery. So the barrels and the distillate and the barrel taxes would not be affected in any way. This just relates to the regular real property and personal property. The proposed term would be up to 40 years, which is the maximum allowed by Kentucky law. Principal amount would be up to $90 million. We're proposing a hold harmless pilot to the school districts. And as with all these revenue bonds, these are not general obligations of the county, so the county's not on the hook for the bonds. You're just a conduit. The sole source of repayment would be the company, and that would be through a lease structure. So the rental payments would basically pledge to repay those bonds. It's not backed by the county's credit or your taxing authority, and it doesn't count against your annual debt limit because it's not considered your debt. So again, it has no financial impact on the county itself. You're just a conduit. And then probably the most important thing, if you look at Exhibit A, there's a list of 4 things there that we're hoping we can use the bond proceeds to finance, certain expansions to the existing property. So I guess before I get into the PowerPoint, Will or Cassie, you want to talk a little bit about those?
Absolutely. So we've got 4 planned projects at the distillery, all directed towards the tourism side of our business, inviting potentially more visitors out. We've grown, year over year in the visitors that we have out to the distillery site, and we'd like to grow that even more. So that's why we're here asking for some relief today. So we've got 4 planned projects. 2 are in the very near future. 1 is in the works right now. We are outfitting a building at our site for a restaurant. It's going to be a pizza restaurant, kind of a grab and go situation there. We've got our chef on staff, and we hope to have that up and going this fall. So everyone come out for a bite to eat at the distillery. The other project in the near future that we hope to start on later this year is in our superintendent's cottage. It's a building that sits on the Botanical Trail. If you've been out to our site, kind of a secluded area that this building will be then turned into kind of a multi-purpose space outfitted with a kitchen, a room for an overnight rental option. We will host small private dinners there. It'll be additional event space for people to come out, as well as like VIP guests, more of an intimate setting that sits a little bit back from the public side of the property. We've also got a building on the production side of the facility that we refer to as the second cistern room. Historically, it was used as a cistern room back in the day, and it has fallen into pretty significant disrepair. Currently, it is 4 walls, no roof, but we would like to restore that building and turn it into a single barrel selection space. So we'll have groups and individuals out. They can taste through barrels and pick a barrel to take home with them, and ideally we will have a roof at that time. And then finally, the last project on our list is really the big one that we'd like to see happen in maybe the next 10 years or so. We've got a building that sits next to our parking lot. If you've been out across the street from the castle, it's the administrative building. So historically, it was used as administrative offices by Colonel Taylor and his crew. It needs some significant work, but we'd like to turn that into an overnight lodging option, potentially a restaurant as well, kind of a boutique hotel in that building. And that is something that has always been in Castle and Key's vision, to utilize that building. And so we'd like to see that come to life in the next 10 years or so. 4 projects.
Thank you, Ms. Price.
Now, hand out some figures and information here about the distilleries. So certainly, as the fiscal court knows, with any distillery, the biggest revenue stream is the barrel tax. And that's not going to be impacted, but I just wanted to go through sort of the magnitude of the numbers we're talking about. There you go.
Thank you.
So the spreadsheet shows basically what were the revenue streams, the local revenue streams, state and local revenue streams from the distillery in 2025. At the top, we have basically the barrel tax, the distilled spirits tax. That's line 1. And you can see Castle and Key paid last year about $730,000 in state and local barrel tax. You can compare that down to the bottom to about $158,000 of real and other tangible personal property taxes. So by far, the lion's share of the tax revenue is still the barrel tax, which continues to go up. They also paid occupational license tax on their net profits to the county, and they had about $62,000 in occupational license tax on their employees' wages. Total revenue stream to the county was about $116,000, in other taxes other than real and personal property taxes. Total taxes, state and local, was about $796,000 before we get to those real and personal property taxes. The 6 items at the bottom are basically the parcels that are used in the distillery business currently, and the tangible personal property tax that they paid on their property and equipment last year. So again, that's about $158,000. So basically, with the IRB, again, the barrel taxes would not be affected. That's $796,000 would continue to go to the state and local governments. The abatement would apply to the bottom 6 items and the expansion. And so if you skip over to the next page, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the historical revenues. Obviously, barrel taxes have been in the news. There's been some legislative activity. The issue for the industry is that those numbers keep increasing. You know, we went through a wave of expansion, and so the distilleries were building warehouses, increasing production, increasing storage. And the way that tax works is as a barrel ages over its life, it goes up in value, and so the state and local taxes go up. So with Castle and Key, as Castle and Key has expanded, you can see there, in 2023, Castle and Key paid a total of $320,000 in barrel tax, of which the county received $23,000. Fast forward to 2025, that number has grown from $320,000 to $727,000. So it's about a 167% increase over 3 years, which is meaningful and is a substantial burden on the industry, as you know. On the county side, your revenues have gone up from $23,000 to about $47,000. So again, 167% increase. Excuse me, 67% increase. Castle and Key is primarily a tourist destination. Yes, it's a distillery, but anyone who's been there have seen they have the tours. It's a destination spot. They have events. So we were asked to provide some visitor information. So the back 3 pages show you just how many people are coming from out of state to visit. Total visitors in 2023 was about a little less than 20,000. In 2025, that had grown to almost 26,000, so a 30% increase over 3 years. And obviously, tourism is the driver. The intent here with these expansions, with these, visitor-related amenities that we're adding, is to increase the draw for visitors. And then I do have a PowerPoint, but I think before I get into that, one of the real drivers here, why we're coming to you today, and not when we first built the distillery, is what's happened in the industry. We went through a pretty long period, almost a decade, of very substantial growth in the industry, but things have changed really dramatically. And so one of the primary reason we're here today to ask for relief is because of the downturn, which has had a major effect certainly on Castle and Key, but on the distillery industry in general in Kentucky. So I'd like to ask maybe Eric if you can talk about that a little bit.
I get the fun stuff. So, well, thank you all, Judge, and thank you, members of the court. I'm Eric Gregory. I'm president of the Kentucky Distillers Association, and thank you all for taking this into consideration. Castle and Key has always been one of my favorite distilleries, and Will knows that. And it's not just because I'm a proud Woodford County resident, but also because they've got something that nobody else has in the industry. They've got a historic site that was really the birthplace of bourbon. We call it Woodford County, and they're the birthplace of bourbon tourism. That distillery was built for tourism with its sunken gardens and all the other things that are going on, and that's why it's one of the top spots on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail Tour. But as Tim mentioned, tourism is keeping the lights on in a lot of distilleries right now, and we're thankful that over the past 10 years we worked closely with the General Assembly and you, Judge Kay, to really modernize a lot of the tourism laws that were still stuck in Prohibition, to let the distilleries have restaurants and cocktail centers and do more things to become more of a Napa Valley type experience, which is what what Will is doing there, and I really applaud them for looking ahead, because the things that he's proposing are exactly what today's bourbon tourists are looking for. They want to eat while they're there. They want to stay overnight. They want to do more experiential things like stay in a cottage or do a private barrel selection and really immerse themselves more in the whole bourbon experience. And they're really one of the few places on the Bourbon Trail where you're encouraged to come and just hang out, you know, at the distillery. And it's amazing if you go there and look at the license plates and then see people pitching a blanket out and having a cocktail with a lunch or something, and just, you know, soaking in everything that the distillery has to offer in the beautiful Woodford County countryside, and then coming to our downtowns and staying in our hotels, eating in our restaurants, shopping our stores, and again generating more revenue for Woodford County. But you've all seen the headlines right now. The industry is having a lot of challenges, a lot of them that are outside our control, which has really been frustrating. Clearly, the trade policies, the retaliatory tariffs in some countries, and even places like Canada right now. There are no tariffs in Canada, but the anti-American sentiment has caused their administration to actually pull all American alcohol from their shelves, not just bourbon, but California wines and everything else. So we're only being sold in 2 of the 13 provinces and territories in Canada, which previously had been our #1 export country. We're down in 2025 about 50% to Canada, and it would be more if not those tariffs, all that didn't kick in until about March or April, and so we all just stockpiled everything over there as much as we could to try to get it to consumers. Other countries around the world also, because of trade policies and kind of retaliatory trade policies, we're down the EU. We're down in pretty much our top 6 countries. So, you know, that's kind of wreaking havoc with exports, which is what a lot of the investment in the last 10 or 15 years has been growing to. Because if you look at the 10 years before the tariffs started hitting, our exports were growing at a rate of 152%. And then it was like slamming the brakes on a freight train. Now, since 2018, we're down 23% and unfortunately continue to go down. Then we've had some other things that have just been challenges. The economy in general, with inflation and things, has got people cutting back on their discretionary spending. And that means they're not going out to eat as much anymore, or they're not going out to movies or things, or someplace where you normally have a cocktail and with friends. You're hanging out at home. And if you're hanging out at home, you're watching Netflix or Hulu or Apple or things like that. And when you think about all those subscriptions add up over a month, well, that might have been a bottle of whiskey or a case of beer or a good bottle of wine or something that you would have enjoyed, you know, out on the town. We've got generational drinking challenges. I've got 3 Gen Zs at home. If you've got any, you know that they don't socialize like my age, I'm Gen X, did. They don't drink as much, and they've got other options, I'll call them, THC beverages and things like that they are experimenting with and trying out. And we've got a few baby boomers, I think. Unfortunately, baby boomers aren't drinking as much either, because mainly for health reasons. Or unfortunately, we're losing a lot of that generation. So all these things, you know, in combination. And if you'd asked me 5 years ago that there'd be a weight loss drug that not only curbed your appetite but curbed alcohol, we'd have laughed, you know, and said no way. But these have all kind of hit us in a perfect storm, and has caused sales to go down. We're working our way through it. I will say a lot of distilleries, if y'all seen the headlines, have cut back on production to kind of align their inventories, laid off some staff workers. Unfortunately, we've had a couple had to close their doors, but you know, that's capitalism and markets at work. And I think it'll take us a couple of years to shake out of this. But I like to say that we've had everything thrown at us in the past 200 years, including Prohibition, which is the worst that you can probably think of. And we've always come out stronger on the other side. So I'm still confident in bourbon. I'm definitely confident in Kentucky bourbon. And I'm confident that with these projects, if y'all will help Castle and Key fund those, that they also will come out the other side stronger and bring more and more tourists to Woodford County. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Anybody additional from your side, Mr. Eifler?
I think that's it. I guess one other thing I'll mention, I didn't have a chance to run the numbers, but I did check today. So, you know, on the spreadsheet we handed out, those were 2025 numbers. The barrel equivalents that Castle and Key had in the county for 2025 was about 187,000. What they reported this year was 215,500. So beyond the numbers that you saw on the spreadsheet, basically it's a 15% increase this year. So we anticipate that's going to continue. I do have a PowerPoint. A lot of you all have seen it before. It just kind of goes through, the law and the legal basis for how this works. Happy to go through it if you like, but otherwise, happy to answer any questions.
I'll defer to the Budget and Finance Committee. Do you all want to see the PowerPoint, or do you have questions?
I had the opportunity to review it prior to the meeting, but I don't want to keep anybody else from seeing it if they want.
I did as well. Any requests to review that? All right, seeing none. Thank you all for the presentation. I know we've had this discussion for some time. The request would be for the Budget and Finance Committee to recommend this to the Fiscal Court to take up at our meeting. Mr. County Attorney, I would say if that was successful, that would have a first reading at the Fiscal Court meeting, and then it would have a second reading the second meeting in May. Is that what your anticipation is?
Yes. Yes, Judge, it would be advertised if the court votes to have that first reading tonight for your May, 26th meeting.
So that's the time frame and the process that we're looking at for the members of the committee and the court. But let me open it up for questions from the committee. Squire Taylor.
Again, I want to thank you for your, Mr. Eifler, your answering my questions before the meeting. I got a couple I want to reiterate for everybody, and then I have one that I thought of as I was thinking about Exhibit A. The first one is that additional question on Exhibit A. We were talking, you mentioned the overnight accommodations. Would the IRB have any impact, and I think I know the answer to this, but I want to ask it, on any tourism transit room tax?
It would not.
Okay, I thought that was the case, but I just wanted to make sure folks would know that this project would also have additional revenue for the community for those kind of purposes, and that obviously tourism dollars that are spent are to help promote this kind of project and these kinds of things. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship, obviously. I also wanted to ask, I want to make sure everyone heard, I know there's been a lot of conversation about the barrel tax in the last few years in Frankfurt. This would hold harmless the schools, and there's we've had some budgetary problems for our school district, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows that this wouldn't have an adverse impact to our schools.
That's right. It would put them in the same financial position they would be in without the bonds having been issued. And then on the barrel tax, when the legislature passed their law, they built in a kind of a backstop protection for fire districts and for school districts where they're held. If revenues go down below what they were last year, there's a replacement tax imposed on the distillery, so they have to make that up.
And I think it's important not only for our schools, but obviously our fire departments that have to respond to the unfortunate incidents of fires at the distillery. So I really appreciate their willingness to work on that. But I want the public to know that there isn't an adverse impact there as well. Thank you.
Yes, with what the gentleman described as all the obstacles in your way to sell your product, by doing these improvements, how do you propose to get people to come? If nobody's drinking and all the numbers show a downturn, how are we going to get people into these facilities?
Tourism, I'm sorry, Tim.
Right.
Tourism right now has been insulated from the sales decreases we've seen. On the Kentucky Bourbon Trail in 2025, we actually saw 2.7 million visitors, which was the exact same amount that we saw in 2024. So in a year when a lot of tourism entities around the country, everything from Walt Disney World to you name it, is seeing declines, drops in attendance in their tourism facilities, we're holding strong. So I'll take that as a win. And that's why you see a lot of the distilleries doing more investments in tourism, because it is bringing people to the distillery to help increase revenue. But hopefully then, like you said, get them to discover your products and drink more, take it home, tell their friends, and that will start boosting sales again.
Also in this project, if you use the $90 million on these four projects, will it take all that for these 4 projects, or will you be using this money for some other projects inside?
It will basically, I think the 60 million, I can't remember the numbers exactly. Basically, it covers all those expansions and the existing facility with a small cushion, because it's going to occur over time. We always add a cushion in the total bond amount in case by the time you get around to doing it, construction costs have increased. So there's usually about a 5% cushion.
And I'm also with Squire Taylor. I'm worried, I want to make sure the fire department, because they have to respond to that catastrophe if it happens. So I want them protected inside this, to make sure that their money is there too.
Yeah, they're guaranteed to get at least the barrel tax revenue.
All right, thank you.
Other questions or comments from members of the committee? Squire Taylor, you recognized.
Just to follow up, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds on business plans, but I would also say that it seems like we're seeing a trend in the industry, and maybe Mr. Gregory could speak to this particularly, that it's we're at some point we're going to hit a ceiling on how many folks are coming in, although I'm proud to see Castle and Key has increased their visitors even last year over the prior years. But part of this initiative that we saw was with the Pepper House, with Woodford Reserve and others, is an idea of having those top dollar experiences. So to have people have these private selection, VIP groups and things, they're spending more money from a smaller subsets that are visiting, and that there's an opportunity for additional revenue, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We've seen the visitor spend go up year after year, and it was up even again last year to about $80 per person, and that's just on average. When you look at a Kentucky Bourbon Trail visitor, they spend anywhere between $600 and $1,400 per trip. They come in packs of usually 4 to 6. They spend at least 3 to 5 nights. And more than half of them have household incomes above $100,000. So it's a very affluent demographic, akin, again, to we're trying to build towards that Napa Valley-esque, demographic that's going there. They trend younger, they're staying longer, coming in packs, and they've got money to spend. That's exactly what your tourism folks want to see.
Squire Varner, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, sir. Just wanted to ask a question. Corn that you use at the distillery, how much of that comes from Woodford County farmers? And how much do you use?
Over the company.
Will Arvin here.
Yes.
For the record, I don't know how much the percentage is exactly on corn, but everything we grow here in Woodford County does go into the distillery.
You grow your own corn for your distillery?
We do.
Totally?
Well, we have to supplement that, but for now, we've been using Woodford County corn, Justman County corn, and Western Kentucky corn.
Okay, all right. The reason I'm asking, I grow corn too, so the market's slim. So if you could use any more than just one person's corn, it would be a great help.
We need more bourbon drinkers and less talk.
Yeah, exactly.
Liquid corn.
Thank you.
Yeah, our distilleries in Kentucky used 27 million bushels of corn last year, and 84% of that came from Kentucky farmers. And what some distilleries do, we may ask, where's the other 16%? They kind of diversify a little bit in case there's a drought somewhere in Western Kentucky or something. They buy a little corn from Southern Indiana or something like that, just to hedge and protect yourself from your crops. But that number has doubled in the last 6 years.
Yeah.
So
Just
we're very proud of that.
in this county, we lost our tobacco market per se, so we had to all diversify. So we're pretty much every farmer's growing some corn. So just FYI. Thank you.
Thank you, Squire Varner. Are there members of the court that have questions? Squire Gill?
Thank you. How many jobs do you think you'll create with this?
We, at the moment, I think we intend to stay at the numbers that we've got. We've hired a chef for our pizza restaurant. I think as we see the hotel come online at the end of this, the larger one, we will definitely hire some employees for that, but we don't have, I guess, exact numbers at this moment for that.
Okay, thank you.
I think there's about 100 employees currently.
Yes, a little over
100.
Other questions or
also-
comments?
I have others.
Please proceed.
Thank you. As far as they're exempt from all state and local property tax for the life of the bond. So for 40 years, no state or local property tax. And the barrel tax, it's kind of questionable. That's being phased out over 20 years. Actually, I guess 17 years left in that. And then, like you said, the schools will be compensated, and fire. There are other taxing districts, including county. And when we did the industrial revenue bond with Woodford Reserve, we directed some of that pilot payment to the county, because the county is going to have to provide services like roads and ambulance and police. And the fire is huge. So, and I'm just wondering what they're being compensated. Will it be the same as the barrel tax or less? It was my understanding it would be considerably less than what the barrel tax would have been if it had not been gradually, cut back over years.
The county or I'm sorry, the schools? Which one?
Fire.
Oh, fire. No, fire is actually, so fire and schools both. So yes, you're right, the barrel tax, it does phase out over 20 years. I think the projections we had that we shared with the legislature were nevertheless, by the way, it phases like 4% each year, so it's a real slow phase out. But for the next 8 to 10 years, it will continue to go up simply because aging barrels, taxable value goes up, and production is still continuing. So to the extent they're not selling, they're aging it longer. So the barrel tax revenue will go up, and then it will slowly begin to decline at the back end of that phase-out schedule. But for schools and for the fire districts, they have basically a floor. So if the revenues from the barrel tax for those two districts ever get below what they received in 2025, the statute basically imposes a replacement tax on distillers. So the distillers in the county basically have to make up any shortfall. So if it goes to zero, they'll continue to receive what they received in 2025, last year. The phase-out begins this year, so last year was set as the benchmark.
Yeah, my concern was when we've had experience with these with distilleries before, and they gave us projections on what the barrel tax would be. So not only did the barrel tax projections not meet, they were never what they projected, and then it was going to be cut back as well. So that was kind of a double hit for us. Another question that I have is the payment in lieu of taxes. Do you have any information on that?
Actually, we've shared a draft of the agreement with the county. So you should have a copy of that document. It may not be in the handouts today, but we, before we have a reading of the ordinance, we always draft the primary bond documents, because that's what you're approving the execution of in the ordinance. So yeah, it's been shared with the county.
And Mr. Gregory, did you have a response on one of the questions?
Yeah, I just want to talk about, again, the barrel tax projections. I'm not sure where you're getting information, but I can tell you the barrel tax projections have gone up farther and faster than we ever expected, and farther than any other projections that were out there. And in the last 5 years alone, they've gone from $20 million to $75 million, 167% increase. And they're going to continue to go up until it hits a phase point, as Tim said, about 8 to 10 years from now, where they will slowly wind down. So during those years, you're going to continue to get more barrel tax revenue, even with the phase down, than you ever would have before. So what did the fire district get in 2025?
6,000. No, I'm sorry,
No.
not on the barrel tax. On the barrel tax, they received 58,000.
And what was that 2 or 3 years ago?
I don't have it that long ago, but it would have been based on what the county received, and their tax rates haven't changed. Less than half what it was.
So they've continued to gain funding as the barrel tax revenue goes up, but the compromise was worked out on House Bill 5, the barrel tax bill, that, as Tim mentioned, they have a floor, so they'll never get less than $57,500, right, going forward, from a replacement tax standpoint.
At least with respect to Castle and Key, and then of course any other distiller in the county, they're protected across the board on the barrel tax phase in.
So that's a pretty high number benchmark here to use in 2025, the year, and quite frankly, we didn't expect it to be that high when we were doing the barrel tax bill. We thought it'd be about 10% higher, but that's a pretty significant increase. So they'll continue to get that forever, right? I mean, it goes on even past the wind down.
No deadline.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Members of the court? We do have Chief Melvin Montgomery here, and with counsel, Mr. Chris Hoskins. Did you all want to speak? Did you want to be recognized?
Very briefly.
Brief is good.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eifler.
Chris Hoskins for the Fire Protection District. We just found out about this yesterday, so we're wrapping our arms around it. Not had an opportunity to discuss with the board yet, but I can say based on my preliminary discussions with Chief Montgomery, as proposed, we cannot support this IRB. It would take away about $250,000 in revenue for the lifetime of the bond from the Fire Protection District. And that is unless there is a pilot agreement or unless there is some sort of agreement or mechanism that is satisfactory to the Fire Protection District. To date, there's no such thing in place. I know that there has been, we actually talked to Mr. Eifler today, and or this afternoon, just trying to figure out what's going on, like the mechanics, more about the project. And I do understand that they're not in agreement to do a pilot for the Fire Protection District. So that is my understanding. Now, whether or not there's some sort of other terms they're agreeable to, those have not been discussed because I haven't had time to discuss these matters with the board yet. But I will say that, I think the Fire Protection District, they'd like a seat at the table for this. We've been through this exercise with LeBron and Graham or Brown Foreman. That, of course, was before. These guys had to fight a fire and contain it for several weeks. So I would ask that they are given a seat at the table. And remember, on the funding, I'll call it 2 tranches of money here, okay, for the Fire Protection District. You've got that barrel tax, which has existed for a long time, HB 5, which has been referred to. I guess there's some questions in my mind as to what it actually does, the mechanics of it. There's, just so you all understand, there is a gradual reduction and ultimate elimination of the barrel tax in 2043. Carved into that, though, last-minute amendment was an exception for the school districts and for the Fire Protection Districts. Now, that's called a replacement fee, okay? My question is, there's a provision in the statute that talks about what the replacement fee does, and it talks about assessments in 25, okay? So I'm wondering, what's that going to look like for the Fire Protection District in the future? I, of course, don't know what that statute's going to look like in 5 or 40 years. So I also have questions there. But that, in sum, right now we can't support it. We would appreciate if you all, gave us a seat at the table and to work through this with Castle and Key. And that's about it. I can take any questions, or Chief Montgomery can.
Mr. Hoskins, what represents a seat at the table for you?
Well, I think there's got to be, I think that if memory serves, and this may have been, back in 15, I think there was some sort of workshop or something where the people were working through kind of how does this look for the other agencies, and I think that in my mind, unless I'm wrong, I don't think that there is necessarily a negotiated pilot agreement so I don't think there's any agreements in place yet for these agencies. What I would want is for me to be able to go tell the board, I now understand what the project is, and I believe that it exempts all of the barrels on the properties, which I think there's 5 and maybe soon to be 6. And so I would, if Castle and Key is unwilling to do some sort of pilot, then I guess the next thing would be to what do we need? What do we want? These are these fires, and Chief can speak to this, this isn't a normal fire. This is unusual fire, to say the least, and these guys need to be protected. Again, we've gone through this before with Brown Foreman, and not, a year later there was that catastrophic fire nearby. So that's our request. And so to answer your question, Judge Kay, I don't know what that looks like. I think that it might depend on sort of the give and take between us two, although I'm concerned that if it pushes forward and we lose some leverage here, and that's kind of the position, frankly, that we got that happened last time when we were dealing with Brown Foreman. By the end of it, it was take it or leave, get what you can, Chris. And I don't want that to happen again, because I want these guys to be protected. So,
thank you, Mr. Hoskins.
Yes, you're welcome.
I'd offer anybody else a chance to discuss any of that.
Well, I guess I'll respond to a couple things. One, there's no question that the bonds do not exempt the barrels. I think, as you all know, Brown Foreman has 2 of these, I think, at least with the county, and they're paying full barrel taxes. So the bonds don't affect that. If you look at Exhibit A in that bond term sheet, it will, and that's going to be in the documents as well, specifically excludes barrels, specifically excludes distillate. The amount of revenue we're talking, I don't know where the fire district got the $250,000 number, but the amount of revenue we're talking about, last year, the fire district received $6,000. That's what would be impacted by the bonds. They received, on the barrel tax side of things, $58,000. So because of that replacement tax, they're guaranteed to receive at least $58,000 with respect to Castle and Key in perpetuity. Over 20 years, that's $2.3 million compared to the $240,000 that they're willing to basically ask the court to hold up this bond issue for. So we believe they're more than compensated. As the barrel tax will continue to increase, it's going to increase much more for them than the taxes at issue here. So if they need revenue, they can certainly put that additional revenue they're going to receive aside. So we think the fire district is protected.
Thank you, Mr. Eifler. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Would it be too much to ask for that if in this interim period here that you all talk about having a discussion for the seat at the table portion of that comment, and I'm going to allow the chief of Versailles Police Department to begin to present his budget before our 5 o'clock hearing that we have. Maybe if you all could have a conversation, we will take this back up momentarily. So, Chief Young, if you wouldn't mind, I apologize for keeping you waiting. We had an in-depth discussion there, and one thing I would note to the committee is that in the Budget and Finance Committee, there are hard questions that get asked, and I appreciate everybody's willingness and ability to address those and discuss that. Chief, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you, Judge. Thank you, members of the court. I'll try to make this quick to leave some time at the end to answer any questions folks may have. But again, I'm Rob Young. I'm Chief of the Police Department. This is going to be my second budget cycle. So I'll go through the budget and then I'll answer any questions at the end. But at the start of the meeting, I just want to say to members of the court, I'm very proud of this budget, extremely proud. We talk about all these rising costs and what it costs to live, to run a house, to run a business, and I try to keep that in mind when I came up with the budget. I'm a Woodford County taxpayer as well, and I know where these funds come from. So I think everyone should have a copy of the budget. Yes. And right now, this is the budget as it stands. And I know myself, our budget analyst, Tracy Combs, Midway Mayor, and Versailles City Mayor, we had a meeting as recently as yesterday. I wish I could stand before you and say I have definitive figures in here. The figures that you're seeing in here are based on the estimates that were provided to me. The good news is I don't believe they're going to change much, if they change at all. There's been some back and forth, but I want to be transparent. And what you see here, I don't believe should change much. And I don't know if Judge Kay wants to speak more on that topic, but I believe this is best estimate on what we have. I'd like to have the firm figures, but I don't have that right now. But the things that'll change are the things that I do not have any control over. And what I mean by that, being discussed, is the COLA raise. And there's been some ongoing discussions in the city of Versailles, and some folks want it more, some folks want it to be in line at the 3%. I stay out of that fight. My fight is to tell you what it costs to run the department at the level that we're at and try to keep control over costs. So the only variables in this budget are the ones I can't control, okay? So I'll say that out of the gate. But what I'm so proud about is when you look at this budget, although we do anticipate a fair amount of growth within the county, in the city, including the Lowe's, a Publix, a number of different housing developments. I do have those figures if we need them, but there is anticipated a fair amount of growth. With that being said, I probably should be asking for more officers, but one of the biggest expenses I have is salary. Salary and salary-related items on our budget account for 86% of our budget. So that's one of the biggest costs I can control. So I did not ask for any more officers in this budget. I'm trying to keep our numbers at the level that they're at. I look at some of our surrounding departments. I go to Georgetown. They're asking for 8 more officers. That costs $1 million just in salary. I'm not asking for any, although we do anticipate a fair amount of growth. But when you go through this budget that I have before you now, it's including a 3% COLA raise as an estimate. And then there are some insurance increases. That's based on an estimate that we were provided from City Hall of 8%. That could go down, that could go up. Obviously, I'm hoping it goes down. So, what's so pleasing about this budget is when you go through it, all the numbers that stayed the same from the year before. That's not easy to do. Tracy Combs, who's been doing this for 20 plus years, her and I sat down and said, where do we want to be? The resounding theme of what we wanted to do was fiscal responsibility and not increase our budget, or at least control it as much as we can. So that's what we did. And you can see the line items. I don't want to go over them in great detail unless you have questions. Magistrate Taylor did have a question about an item on here, and there's one in red, a supplemental life insurance. That wasn't included before, and to answer any questions that there may be about that, I had learned during some of our meetings at City Council that the fire department had been receiving a supplemental life insurance for their firemen. That is wonderful. I applaud them for doing it. I didn't have a great reason why we didn't have that, and so I asked to have that included in our budget. That is for life insurance, accidental death, and dismemberment. That's why that's in there. It's to cover our folks. I could not look our officers in the face and explain to them why, if both of them went to the same scene, why one's family would be paid that much more if you both should perish in that fire. And I couldn't explain that, so that's why I just wanted to level the playing field for the first responders, and that's what that amount is. And I know that question had come up. If you go down, the salary was the 3%. There's some things that I wanted to bring up. So if you go to professional and technical fees, a lot of folks have some questions about what that includes. And that includes things that we use in investigations and in criminal cases and in backgrounds, credit checks. These are all subscriptions. A leads online, That helps us. If somebody's property is stolen, we could find if it's sold at a pawn shop. And that's pawn. I apologize for my Jersey accent. That's pawn. There's also, I saw a couple looks. That's why I wanted to clarify. There's also, we're going through an accreditation. And we're very proud because this is something Chief Alan Love started back in 1999, I believe. But we're going through reaccreditation. Reaccreditation is making sure that your police department, has met certain professional standards to be accredited. We have policies, we have training in place, our facilities. We're going through that again. I think this will be our 6th reaccreditation. There's a fee. We didn't include that in there. We're actually going to pay that out of our asset forfeiture fund. Asset forfeiture funds are not guaranteed. They've been really hit or miss lately, and we can't count on them as a budget item, but we are going to try to hold true to that fiscal responsibility and pay that out of there. Something else we did, I forgot to mention, on our salaries, we were able to reduce our salaries by our cleaning person who was an employee, retired. Benefits are expensive, as everyone knows. So we now have our building maintained, cleaned, under a contract. It's a contract employee. And so we took it out of salaries, moved it into a contract. That saved our taxpayers $20,000. So that was a move that we were very proud about. Overall, our budget has only increased by, bear with me here, so from last year's budget to this year's budget, we only had an increase of I have it broken up according to what Woodford County is going to pay. So this year's budget is $2.5 million. Last year it was $2.478. So that increase is $211,000. Wait, bear with me here. The operational budget is only increasing $270,000. And I'll get to the capital budget in a moment. We actually reduced the capital budget by $73,000. That means that the overall increase to our budget is $196,000. And that's something that I think is fantastic given what everyone's facing currently. So for FY26, our county contribution to that budget would be $2,716,000. When you compare it to last year, that's only an increase of $57,687 from last year's budget for the county. One of the biggest things that help, well, not the biggest thing, an important part of that equation to impact ours is the capital budget. So when you go over to our capital budget, we're able to reduce that by roughly $74,000 from last year. And we did that by switching the type of vehicles we were utilizing and replacing. Those of you who know, our vehicles are a key piece of equipment for law enforcement. And right now we have a number of vehicles that are past really their useful life, meaning in the city policy, you have to replace patrol vehicles after 7 years or 125,000 miles. And currently, we have a number of vehicles that are beyond that. I think 40% of our fleet is beyond what's allowed in city policy. So we're trying to stay current and refresh our vehicle fleet by replacing them. We try to replace 5 a year. If you notice that some of our patrol vehicles now are pickup trucks versus the Tahoes. We're using Tahoes, but the Tahoes are that much more expensive than the pickup trucks. The difference in price between a fully equipped Tahoe versus the pickup truck is roughly $5,300 difference. What I've done is folks that don't need patrol vehicles, admin and detectives, we're taking them out of patrol vehicles and putting them in Traverses. They're not patrol rated, but each of those vehicles is a difference of $38,000 once they're fully equipped. That is a significant savings that we've been able to pass on to our taxpayers. So from switching those vehicles, we're saving $92,000 in our budget. And that's a big difference when it comes to being able to pass that along. What you get for the money that you spend, because I know law enforcement and public safety is expensive. It's not a cheap endeavor. But I think everyone who lives in Woodford County knows from being around town how safe we truly are and some of the impact that the officers make on a daily basis. We don't talk a lot about it. We just quietly go on with our jobs and do things. But there's a lot that happens in the county that are handled. And we have a great prosecutor, Mr. Alan George, and now with Kelly Kearney in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, we've been able to take a lot of these cases to prosecution. So what do you get for that money? Last year, I don't know if you know, but we handled almost 31,000 calls for service last year. That's last calendar year. 31,000 calls for service. That could be a barking dog up to a murder. Unfortunately, we didn't have that. But we took reports on 709 crimes that were committed within Woodford County. We investigated 918 collisions with 154 injuries and 2 people killed. We issued over 2,500 citations. This year, we're seeing an uptick in some of our calls for service. As of April, we're at over 10,000 calls for service. And that's a little over a quarter of the way through the year. We've already taken 203 crime reports. Last year at the same